Well, hello there, DFW North Texas curious. Wait, hold on. I thought about this. No.
Yeah. Woo. Ooh. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree the Podcast is brought to you by listeners like you. If you enjoy Third Degree the Podcast or any of our work at thirddegree.net or on social media, our coverage of all the professional teams in the Dallas area, including FC Dallas, why not support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Third Degree. Contribute any amount you want. If you go up to the Three Amigos level, you can join our amazing Discord, the great community. We're growing there. That's patreon.com/Third Degree. Thanks again for your support.
Well, hello there, DFW/North Texas soccer curious fan. Welcome to Third Degree, the podcast. I'm trying out something new because it's not like there's too many teams just to be
and get more all the time.
Yeah. First off, there he is, the man with the beard and the star of his Only Dan's account. It is Dan Crooke. Come in, Dan.
I'm still not quite sure about that joke, even if the Metro Curious are.
Deny. And your hero, my hero, everybody's hero, editor, founder, thirddegree.net, and the original soccer influencer. It is Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hey, fellas, how you doing? The Nile is not just a river in Egypt.
That's right. Come on, Only Dan's is a really funny joke. And I think I stole it from somebody on the Discord.
If onlydans.com was available, that would be fun.
Oh my God. Has anybody looked to see if onlydan.com is available? Because I may be willing to buy that URL.
I'm checking right now.
I despair.
It is for sale, Peter, but it's $2,700. So I think that's a good joke, but it ain't a $2,700 joke.
Yeah, come on, Peter, pony up.
This pod ain't that popular.
That's right. Well, let me put it this way. If we would like to crowdsource and fund onlydan.com, we'll just open the opportunity now. We'll start a GoFundMe, whatever, and then we'll make everybody's Dan dreams come true. Okay, well, Buzz, just to be completely honest with everybody, I love The Curious very, very much, but I'd rather be watching the final episode of my rewatch of season 1 of Andor, with season 2 debuting tomorrow, Tuesday, than talk about the current plight of one FC Dallas. Although they're undefeated on the road, that is good news. There's no shame about that. But they went to Minnesota, and I'm going to let you, for the next however many minutes you want, talk about all the good things about Dallas 0, Minnesota 0.
You want the good things? Okay, well, I will admit first that the last 2 games have been very boring to watch. Boring aside, you have to love the results on the road. The undefeated on the road is insane. I mean, that's a ridiculous stat, ridiculous way of being, given how hard it is to win and get results on the road in this league. So what was good about this game? Well, mainly just defense. That's about it. The collective group defense played pretty well, limited Minnesota which is a pretty good attacking team, to not a lot of chances. All their post-game stuff was lamenting how teams have figured out how to defend them or something, or, that kind of talk. But, the primary goal over the winter, one of the primary goals was to try and repair the defense quite a bit around here. And Osaze Urhoghide has been a fabulous part of that. Shaq Moore has developed enough in terms of this system to solve the problems on the right side between him and whoever the center back is, Ibiaga up until now. And then another positive would be Abubakar playing just about as good as Ibiaga. And it's nice to have a guy playing up to a level, except he got hurt, where you could actually rotate him in like that. And we're comfortable. And then Nolan's been great at left back. So that's it. That's the positives. The defense looks pretty good, but that's about it that's going on. It is good.
Man, are we going to put an over and under on the amount of time before the national MLS soccer mediarati start talking about Urhoghide in the same glowing terms that we have now for the last 2 months?
Well, I don't know what it will take. The team has started. You can tell on social media, the team is starting to push that narrative. With the language they're using around some of the stuff they're putting out about him and his stats and that kinds of things. I think they obviously recognize what a great player they have in their hands. I have not seen a lot of national talk about him, to be fair. But then part of that is the nature of FC Dallas, the National League
East
and media
Coast bias, man.
Well, it's not. Well, there definitely is coastal bias in sports, but in this particular case in MLS, Dallas has not necessarily been a very relative team, impactful team over the decades. And it's been
I
a
think
bit.
you meant relevant.
That's not what I said.
You said relative.
I meant relevant. Impactful team very much in the last since Oscar left, really. So Dallas often gets ignored by the league's publications, the podcasts, and things like that. So it's not surprising that you're not hearing a lot of talk about Urquide on a national perspective. So, and even as good as he is, we may never hear that, just because if you're not going to be in the top third of the standings, you're not going to get much attention. If you're going to be in the middle to the bottom of the standings, you're not going to get much attention.
Dan, where's the Danometer on Minnesota Donut, Dallas Donut?
I think you go to a team that's unbeaten at home and come away with a point. I think that's encouraging in itself. That's there's so much. Someone's really grinding some tiles. That sounds awful. I shouldn't have said that.
Are you constructing a new Only Dan studio?
Allegedly, yeah.
Okay.
Made out of porcelain tile, I guess. Who knows?
A stark white room.
Almost surgical.
All right, Buzz. Well, I think obviously the big news about this game was that Eric Quill decided to go into flop it around mode. Lots of changes in the lineup. He left Lucho Costa on the bench. As you said, Abubakar got a start. Lots of changes in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think Abubakar is as much about, post-game, Quill talked about multiple factors. One was guys that had been playing pretty well in training and he wanted to give them a chance. And I think that probably qualifies for Abubakar in terms of then getting Iviaga some rest. The guy's in his mid-30s. You got to be careful with that guy a little bit. Lucho Costa, he basically, Quill said he went to him and told him, like, look, I want to rest you, because, it's a long season, but also in part because Dallas has become a team that basically their strategy is just booted up field to Acosta and Musa. And Quill basically wanted to, make them have to play without Acosta and learn how to play without Acosta and figure out other ways to get things done. Now, your mileage will vary on whether that happened or not, because it didn't really happen for the most part in terms of getting things done without Acosta.
Right.
He came into the game and then had like 3/4 of all the XG they had in the whole game on one play, which was that one ball that came back to him from Miro. So, the offensively, it didn't really work very well. It wasn't very good. I think probably of the changes, the one that probably looked to me like it might have been a player just getting dropped for quality was probably Delgado. I think Sho Kafumana outplayed him in the previous game, and I think that he did more in this game, Sho did, than Patterson has all year. So, that's the one of the moves that felt like a benching to me. Benching might be a little harsh. The others were all about rest or injury. Farrington, for example, for Petter Musa, of course, is just straight injury. So he'll have to play. Farrington will as long as Moose is out, which might be more than we thought it was going to be. So we'll see. But, when you have some changes, in part, if you want the changes to be, can we play without this guy? And the answer is pretty much no, not really. You might have to do some searching in terms of an analysis to try and figure out how in the world can we get playing in a positive way, with somebody other than Lucio Acosta. Can some other people figure out ways to get forward and get in dangerous spots? Because right now it's basically a one-trick pony team. All they have, especially with Moose out, all they have is Acosta right now in terms of getting something going, and that's not good.
All right, so that's going to lead me into a question, which I'm kind of confused, because Dallas is what, 8th, 9th place, I guess it is.
Ninth.
It's kind of tight. Obviously, it's super early in the season.
It's early.
We're only 9 games into the season, and I tend to I'm trying to figure out how I feel about this, because in your Discord and on social media, I see and have been seeing quite a bit of people still throwing a lot of shade Nico Esteves' way about how he coached this team and how boring the team was back then and how bad and awful the Asta team looks while they're up in the charts and winning games and collecting points, but they're no fun to watch. So, Buzz, I did some math. I actually did some research for the podcast. And this actually surprised me, although the eyeball test kind of indicated this was the case. But the non-penalty XG for Dallas in the last 3 games is 1.38 combined. The last 3 games, non-penalty XG is 0.7, 0.6, and 0.8.
It's not very good.
No. So that leads me into this other, I started digging some more. And because this idea that Quill and what Quill is putting out there is a more entertaining team. And I began to ask myself, do I think this is a more entertaining team than last year's or any of the Nico Esteves 3 seasons? And I'm not sure that it is anymore because, man, I watch this team and I get incredibly frustrated just in a different way than I used to with Nico's teams.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to not just stick to the eyeball test. Let me just kind of throw some numbers at you. So Nico Esteves's non-penalty XG for the first 9 games of 2022 was 1.28. In 23, it was 1.16. Last year, it was 1.08. And this year, average, this is an average over the first 9 games under Quill, it's only 1.13. So Quill's average non-penalty XG in his first 9 games is the 3rd best out of the last 4 seasons. And so I do beg the question, and I'll ask you this question first, Dan, you can answer first. Is Eric Quill's FC Dallas more entertaining to watch than any of the Nico Esteves' seasons?
I think so.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
where?
It's just purely style of play. I found that Nico's teams often played without any purpose. It was just dull as dishwater, especially towards the end. I think at least with Quill's style, it's engaging, it's counter-attacking, it's a little bit chaotic. It's entertaining.
Buzz?
I think that the beginning of the season, when in the preseason and the first few games, when we were talking about how all the games are going to be 4-3, and Dallas had a lot of scoring punch, even though they were giving up games, they had a lot of scoring punch. You know, the games were up and down. I thought those were pretty entertaining. But then, you know, since they switched to this other formation basically and solidified their defense, they've done it with Ramiro as the corner of this 3 across in front of their defense. And they sort of, once they did that, that kind of took some of the starch out of what Leggett was doing. It took off a winger and put on an 8. And by nature, that's going to make your team more simple, you know, more, not simple is the wrong word, more, less vertical, right? You're left with one wing playing a vertical way and one guy playing underneath in Lucho Costa. So you lose some verticality. And then since Leget's got hurt, it's gotten worse. And now you're having, you know, 2 6s out of the 3 players across the midfield, you know, and Sho Kafamana's been in there, and either Patterson Delgado's been in there who hasn't done squat, or now Sho, who is coming back from a pretty devastating illness that we don't know what it was. So certainly over the last month and a half, you know, the back half of these first 9 games, let's call it, you know, it's become very defensive and very boring, and they've become very one-dimensional. This very much like this booted up front to hope and Musa and Lucho can do it. So I think if you go back to the beginning of the year, if you go back to that front 3 underneath Musa, you know, 2 real wingers, then I think the games open up and become very exciting and very entertaining. But you give up a lot more goals, you know, and you got to try and outscore people. So it's kind of a balance. You know, Quill's obviously playing to solve the defensive issues that he has with certain, you know, again, when you remember when he changed formations, he talks about this new formation fits the profiles of the players he has better. He's trying to make a solid defense out of guys that don't quite fit the way he wanted to play. He has a roster that doesn't fit the way he wanted to play, which we've been talking about for like 6 or 7 years here now in Dallas.
Right.
So hopefully with time, Quill can find a way to make the roster fit the way he actually wants to play, you know, or develop guys or buy guys or whatever it's going to take. Because right now he doesn't. So he's trying to hodgepodge it together. And it makes for a very defensive team and a very not exciting team when you're missing a couple of pieces as the injuries are piling up now too.
Yeah. So I was digging into the numbers even more because this really started to bother me because I, like everybody else, really had a big distaste for the Nico Estevez team last year, which, by the way, in the first 9 games of the season, we were all talking about it leading into being maybe the most historically bad team in club history.
Yeah, it was on pace for that at one point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, after the first 9 games, the team had won 2 games. I think they had lost 5 and drawn 2. I think they were 2-5-2. But here's the crazy part. So while Dallas has a better record now and is undefeated on the road, in terms of them being entertaining, do you realize that the current Eric Quill team has 5 less goal created actions after the first 9 games than last season's uber boring Nico Estevez team?
Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah, that's one of the fallacies of this current team is that they're managing to win with mysterious ways. You know, last year the ability for this team to come back, this Eric Quill team to come back is really remarkable. You know, I think last year, if we can think back to Nico's teams, especially early in the season, those teams were bleeding goals, if I remember correctly. And that was the big issue, was the defense. Because, you know, when we got to the end of the year, that was all the conversation, right? Fix the defense, fix the defense, fix the defense. And it was the year before. If you go back to 2022, the good Nico season, it was because he had a good defense that first year. Right. Remember, they had a really low goals against that season. And
so after 9 games, they had given up 12 goals. Where's Dallas this season?
I feel like it's more than that.
Well, they only gave up last season 12 goals. After 9 games.
Yeah, I believe I'm looking up this season. 11.
All right.
So, you know,
effectively the same.
Pretty much. But, you know, it's the goals against, you know, is -1. I mean, the goal differential right now is -1. Which is kind of where they finished the year. At the end of the year, I think I remember correctly, they were -1 or right at 0, maybe.
Yeah.
And we talked about they needed to get 10 different. They needed to be +10 in the goal differential if you wanted to improve. And right now they're not. You know, but they're getting results, and so it's weird.
Yeah, and so I guess that's why I'm really trying to dig into this. Is this whole concept that, you know, everybody was bored by Nico's teams last year, and Dan says he's more entertained by this. But when I watch this team, I'm incredibly frustrated in watching it because it's not a very good team at this point. I'm not saying it won't be by the end of the season and they'll find their way, but I'm curious about this idea that they're more entertaining to watch. I'm going to beg you to explain it more to me, Dan. Tell me what I'm missing.
Well, I think, you know, it's kind of in line with the Pep Guardiola Barcelona teams. Remember how people got so incredibly frustrated with them because they were so dominant in possession, but it was possession without a purpose for the most part. And then, you know, he goes to Bayern Munich and suddenly it's, oh yeah, there's possession with purpose. There's entertainment. It doesn't necessarily have to be the best team in the world winning. I just think a lot of the Nico games ended up like that little Simpsons clip where they kind of took the piss out of soccer. Oh my God, he's passed it again. Oh, he's passed it again. It was just that. There was, you know, you just nod off. I would, yeah. Maybe this is just me as a Luton fan. I would rather just be entertained by an absolute shit show that goes nowhere than what can sometimes be technical brilliance but doesn't actually produce anything of interest.
I think that the thing that people most find entertaining is chances. You don't have to score necessarily, but if you create chances, you'll be entertaining. And so for the first few games of the year, without looking, I would say Dallas created a lot more scoring chances in the first 4 or 5 games. And then they changed tactics and the chance creation has gone down. And like you talked about that average XG, non-penalty XG being like the 1.13, that, you know, that feels about right.
So,
you know? So it's like,
I have it right here in front of me. In the Houston game, they created 12 scoring chances.
Right.
Colorado 20, Chicago 26, Vancouver 10, Salt Lake 28, Sporting 11, Atlanta 16, Seattle 19, Minnesota 15. Now,
I bet if you... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because what I thought was interesting about the Real Salt Lake game, that was one of their higher non-penalty XG games at 1.4. But that is also, I don't think, very good for a team that was playing up a man for the majority of the game.
Well, no, that's a different question though. I think if you surveyed people on like what games this year were entertaining, I bet you those games where they have 20, 22 chances, scoring chances, people were like, that was a really fun game. And the game where they had 10 chances, people were like, well, that was really boring. I think that's what most people consider entertaining. It's like, in the sense of like, it's the difference between like a half court basketball game where they sort of pass it around and fire it up every once in a while, and teams that are running up and down the court, right? So getting up and down and getting opportunities, getting shots is exciting and fun. So the last few games, particularly the last couple of games, the shots have been like 10 or under, and that's not exciting and that's not fun. So, Quill's teams can be, and this has nothing to do with winning necessarily. I think if you go back to those earlier games in the season, they are one's a good example because you're right, they were up a man the whole time. So they had way more chances than they had been since then. So like since then, you're like, oh, the games are really boring. So I think that's what it comes down to.
Well, I think, everyone gets a different level of enjoyment out of the game. I really enjoyed the Minnesota game. It only produced 7 shots on target between the two teams. But in terms of actual play in the middle of the field, FC Dallas had Minnesota on the back foot for large parts. Then Minnesota would break and really put Dallas under pressure. There was a lot, there was never any kind of long passages of possession. It was just kind of your interest was just constantly held rather than just, a lull. Oh, there's a chance. Oh, lull chance.
Well, I don't know if this is going to make any point or add any gasoline to the fire, but you mentioned goal creation opportunities. This season, in the first 9 games, the team has created 157 total. What do you think the total was after 9 games and that terrible first 9 games last year?
I bet it's pretty similar because those teams last year, I think in my probably incorrect memory, I feel like the early parts of last year was about really bad defense. And so probably offensively, these two teams are probably fairly similar. I would bet this year to last year. That's my guess.
This year, the team has created 157 scoring opportunities, goal creation opportunities after the first 9 games. Last year, in the uber bad, super boring Nico Estevez team, it was 217.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that puts a capsule on the team this year. Like, last year's team was bad because of the defense, and I think that but it was creating plenty of chances. This year's team at the beginning of the year had lots of chances, but the last month or so has really dried up in its chances. So you can. I think for me, that's what makes an exciting game. I think Dan clearly is giving you another example of like to him, he finds this team more entertaining than Nico's just because of the style, the way they play, and everyone's better is different in terms of what makes for an entertaining game. The last 2 for me specifically, I've sat there and thought, boy, this game is really boring because Dallas can't get through the midfield and they can't get anything going. They can't get any offensive creation going. So that bores me to tears. And the teams they've played against have done the same thing, right? I mean, Seattle had a really poor game where they hardly created. They won, but they had a poor game where they hardly created any chances. Everyone was yelling about Jesus. Remember, all their fans were mad about, is this guy any good? Minnesota, after the game, they're talking about how they can't ever people figured out how to defend them and they can't get through and didn't get a lot of chance creation. So like these last 2 games have been particularly boring, and for me, but obviously, the way Dan and I look at the game is in terms of our enjoyment is slightly different. And it's probably true for everybody. So, that's why I think some people like this team in general better than Nico's team. We also, of course, only remember like the parts about Nico's teams that sucked, which was the passing it around. It's not like it was Lucci ball with like 700 passes not going anywhere. It still had a whole lot of passes. I think what I didn't like about Nico ball the most was this defensive focus, this rigid. This is where my unlikability of watching them play came in. They played a really, really rigid, defined defensive system. Everybody had a very specific roles, and you weren't allowed to go forward. You weren't allowed to be adventurous. It's like, no, you got to keep those guys back. You got to have those outside backs on top of the defense. You got to have those 2 midfielders. There was no sense of adventure, no swashbuckling. We made that joke about you're coaching for a mid-table team in Spain to try and get ties, because you were trying to grind out everything. Whereas Quill's teams have a recklessness about them. They have an abandon about them, a willingness to just throw it to the winds and get forward. Now, it hasn't been good. That's different than being, having an openness and ability and a desire to fly. It doesn't always work. It hasn't worked the last 2 games at all. He'll obviously be searching for answers If it keeps going this way, people are going to start talking about how boring the team is. But I think at the end of the day, at the beginning of the year, we still remember like the 4 or 5 games that were fun, at the beginning of the year.
Well, just to kind of put a bow on it, Austin is in second with 16 points, but they've only scored 7 and only given up 8. They have a goal differential of -1. Dallas in ninth on 12 points, have only scored 10 and given up 11 with a goal differential of 1. So
that just goes to show you that Nico
tomato,
Ball still,
tomato.
Yeah, Nico Ball is still Nico Ball. 7 goals for versus like San Jose has 19 goals for, right? I mean, so like it's 8 goals against versus San Jose's 17 goals against. So it just depends on what you want. And Austin's Nico Ball, which can be boring as hell to watch, is getting them points. Everybody loved Nico Ball in 2022.
One thing to keep in mind about that, their version of Nico Ball isn't the 3 centre backs, 2 stay-at-home fullbacks, which, under the guise of wing backs. It's that kind of slightly more adventurous back four and actually a full midfield. So, if it ends up for them like the first season did for Nico, other than the playoff game in Austin where he kind of went back on all of that, more power to him. It's just, it kind of goes back on almost that you're only as good as your last game sort of phrase. And
fair,
his last 30-some games were fucking dull.
Yep, boy, they were. Absolutely. A guy was trying to coach for his job and at the detriment of entertainment, and it didn't work. And it failed for everybody.
I think, Lucci ball got boring at times, but you had that high press element where, you're out of possession and suddenly it's that counter press, try and get it back. Even if you end up recycling the ball all the way back to the defense, you're immediately going out and you're trying to win possession. You're not just sitting back and letting it happen. And that kind of felt like a real frustration with Nico. Was just, okay, lost possession. Well, we're going to let whatever happens happen. Oh, we won it back. Now no one's moving, so let's just sit here on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, Buzz, how did you feel about Logan Farrington playing up top by himself? I think a lot of people have wanted to see Logan play this position, get his opportunity, get his ride, and he's going to get it for a while. We'll talk about Musa here in a minute, but
yeah. Well, I had a chance to talk to Quill post-game about Farrington, and he kind of echoed some of the things I was thinking, which was like, I thought his performance was pretty good. Quill said specifically that, if I could start 12 players, Logan would be the 12th guy. And he's told him that, he thinks he's going to play a high volume of minutes. But the bottom line is that Musa costs a lot of money. And there are some deficiencies in Logan's game compared to Petr Musa. There are also some positives in his game compared to Petr Musa, particularly his off-ball energy and movement and action is just really, really high. He does a ton of work when he doesn't have the ball, and that's really nice. It can be infectious. I thought overall he had a really good game, except for one thing. And that's the thing that's plugged him all the time. He had 6 miscontrolled passes where he'd fumbled the ball into his feet. Now, that's a problem that Musa occasionally has too, but 6 is too many. So they both need to clean that up, and Farrington probably knows he needs to clean that up too. I would have liked to have seen him get more touches in the final third, Farrington. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of that is about the team play and the team concept right in that game, not Logan Farrington. So in general, I thought he was pretty good. I mean, he of the amount of ball that he got, he got a shot or 2 off, got a couple good actions off of it. And, for guy filling in for Petr Musa, that was a pretty solid performance. I think where Dallas was deficient offensively, it wasn't because of him. Mm-hmm. It was because of the other 2 guys.
Ka'ike gets another start. How was the puppy dog in your mind on this evening?
Really good, actually. He's a tackling machine. Look, we've talked about this before. I don't like guys that have to tackle a lot, but he is super, super rangy. And I think he had 5 tackles, and then he was 5 of 6 on challenges, which is when a guy tries to dribble past you, whether you deny that or not. It's not necessarily a tackle, obviously, always, but it can be. And so he gets in the way a lot. He doesn't, because of his ranginess, he doesn't anticipate. So he doesn't have really high intercepts or really high recoveries. He's okay recoveries, but he was not really high. Like Irimandy would have 15, he's great and would have intercepts and turn clean plays back. So his deficiencies from Kaique are the brain, the young player. I will say that like there's a point in the game where he and Ramiro flipped and Kaique was in the middle and Ramiro was sort of more on the right. I don't know whether that was a coaching call or whether they just did that. I really like that a lot. I would really like to see that going forward because I think ideally, in terms of the way the season is going to grow, if you could have Kaique play into being that stay-at-home 6 in front of the back, his ranginess in there, even as a stay-at-home 6, his ranginess in there would allow the 2-8s much more freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And while right now, Ramiro is a better progressive passer than Kaique. So if you put Ramiro at a little more of an 8 role, he would maybe be able to get forward a little bit better with passing. That would open up show a little bit, maybe more passing. And I think because that was in the second half, and that's what Dallas was playing better, in my opinion. And if you're looking towards the rest of the season, and if you're going to have a Paxton coming back or a Leggett getting healthy, if Kaique could develop into that destroying 6 there, then those 8s could be really free. And maybe this system could really work with a Paxton, a Leggett, a show if they end up keeping him, a Delgado even, maybe in the near term, possibly again. So I don't know whether the next game's the game for that, but I think to see that late in the game, I was like, ooh, I really like that because of his ranginess and because of his lack of ability to pass forward yet from Kaique. Ramiro, believe it or not, Ramiro can't dribble for shit, but he can pass better than Kaique can right now. And so that flip role I actually quite liked.
Yep. It was a weird game. I never thought I never thought there was I never felt like either team was going to win the game. It always felt like a scoreless draw. Right. It was a very, very, very boring game of soccer. Dan, you got any other thoughts about the game in Minnesota before we move on?
No, sir. Happy to get out that with a point.
Okay, that's right.
Well, what did you guys think of Show versus Delgado? Do you think did you think Show did better?
Yes, but that's not saying much. I think Delgado is such a miss. Again, I mean, I get frustrated because I see, people in your Discord or people online complimenting players, and I just feel like it's a bit of, but is that guy really MLS starting quality? And and this team has a bunch of guys on it that I'm just not sure are starting players on better teams in the league. And I think Patterson Delgado is one of those guys. Maybe it's not fair to judge Show yet because he's only been back for a couple of weeks, but I'm still not sure on him. I'm not even really sure how I feel about Ramiro yet, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And Kaique has a whole bunch of interesting aspects to him, but man, he's also a kid, and he's got a lot more to show and prove before I can really make any kind of real judgment on him. So, is one better than the other? Probably yes, but do I think any of them are good enough to make this a really competitive playoff type team? No, not really. Not yet.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think the biggest complaint for me about Delgado is, at the end of the day, going to be what they paid for him. I think on the broadcast, I heard the commentator say something about $2.5 million. I cannot find that number anywhere. That was what Ajax turned down in terms of buying him, because $2.5 million for Delgado is nuts. So I hope that price isn't right, and I can't find a real price. So, my opinion of whether Delgado's any good or not for this team is going to change a lot based on what he costs. Yeah. Just like when they signed Kaique for $4 million, and we're like, holy crap, $4 million is a crazy amount of money for a 19-year-old. 6 for sure, let alone a 19-year-old
with one senior team start in his life.
Game. So, in the end of the day, I think that'll be a factor. I mean, coaches will always say it's not, but we all know that when the team pays a lot of money for a player, it's a factor in how much they're going to play. So, I think there's going to be an agenda going forward about how we get Kaique into games. And that's why, in a way, I hope that there's not an agenda with Delgado that he really wasn't $2.5 million, because that would be bad. I mean, that's an Enesali level money for a guy that's better than Enesali, but not crazy better than Enesali, which is something we'll have to worry about in another month or so.
Right.
2 months, another 2 months.
By the way, should mention it was Martin Paes's 100th MLS game, and he got a clean sheet. So congratulations to him. Good stuff.
That sure feels fast, doesn't it?
Boy, it does. 100 games. That does absolutely feel pretty good. Okay, very good. So 0-0, Dallas down to 9th place. Minnesota still undefeated at home. Dallas still undefeated on the road. And I don't want to disregard that or discount it in any way. That's a big deal. I mean, unfortunately, it's bookended with the fact they've only won one game at home so far.
Oh my gosh! Imagine whether it'd be in the standings if they didn't have that fabulous road form.
Yeah,
if they played at the home form was in the road.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so here's what gets interesting because the next opponent is Miami, and they have to go to Miami. Now, this game was originally scheduled for Saturday, but because Miami has a road game in Vancouver on Thursday, the game has been pushed to Sunday. And I don't know, Buzz, if you happen to pop on the Miami game the other day. Messi, something's wrong physically with Messi.
Oh, is there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like the last 30 minutes of the game, he just stopped running all the way together. And every time he got the ball, I watched him get dispossessed in a very un-Messi-like way and then not even try to chase. And even Taylor Twellman or whoever the color guy was at the time was like, man, something's up because he's not running. He hasn't moved. He's kind of standing in a Valderrama like 10-yard radius space and not doing anything. And as soon as the game was over, he went straight into the locker room.
My goodness, maybe we'll see him enter without him. Maybe they'll rest him since Dallas is ninth in the standings. They might look at that as a team to get rest against.
Well, and plus they've got the Cup game on Thursday.
Yeah, right.
So even if he plays on Thursday, I think the odds of him starting on Sunday are extremely low.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's true.
Miami can look really good in amazing runs of play, by the way.
Well, they have a really good roster, Messi aside, because they have a whole bunch of players who took a lot less money to play there because of Messi. So
and it's Miami.
And it's Miami. So they got dudes that are worth way more money playing on way less money just for that opportunity, which I don't blame them for. But,
Dan, you got anything else you'd like to tell us about Miami as we get ready for Sunday?
Oh, obviously, they're the only unbeaten team in the league left, which is a fun one. So I was kind of just looking at some stuff. They've actually averaged 15 shots against per game over the last 5 games. They are not having the best of times defensively, but teams are just failing to capitalize on that.
They've only allowed 6 goals this season, which is pretty impressive for a team that we all think is deficiency is in defense.
Yeah, definitely. They're also they've got a weird keeper situation. They've already cycled through 3 goalkeepers this season.
Wow.
Obviously, Drake Callender was kind of like the lockdown starter, but they started with what's his name, Oscar Ustari. He got sent off, and then they've just had a couple of issues. Really good in the midfield. Sergio Busquets is just absolutely shutting everything down. They are second highest percentage of take-ons against them, resulting in a tackle. Second fewest progressive carries allowed. Second fewest carries into the box allowed. Second best tackle rate. Most defensive errors forced. They do absolutely nothing in the attacking third. Everything is middle third. It is purely, that screen where Busquets takes over. But they did miss Federico Redondo with a hamstring injury at the weekend. So it'll be interesting to see how they manage his load if he's available for the next, 3 games, the 2 Vancouver games and the Dallas game in between.
The game that I watched, I was super impressed with their young, I think he's a homegrown center back, Noah Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Really impressive player. Not very big for a center back, but he's only 20 years old. I think he's only like 5'9", 5'10", whatever. Like, kid's pretty impressive.
Yeah, 20 years old.
Turns 21 the day after the game.
Oh, well, happy birthday to Noah Allen, sorry.
He's out of their academy. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, and they have Fafa Pico, so we might get angry Fafa again.
You know what? Let me say this. I've watched this team a few times, and every time I see Fafa play, he actually looks really good. He's working his ass off. What slow feet don't eat or whatever he is living that one hard. And I've probably seen him play better in small little portions more for Miami than I think I can remember him ever playing here in Dallas or Houston or wherever else he's played. Probably helps when you've got Jordi Alba behind you. So that
that's fair. I think it'll be interesting as well. Now that Santi Morales has made 2 appearances this season, just to see a brief FC Dallas Academy player kind of come back.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, that is Sunday, that game. And Buzz, what do you think Eric's going to try to do for a starting lineup?
Well, I think that,
well, hold on. Before we do this, let's talk about the injury situation, because I think that obviously leads into this.
Okay.
And the big question on everybody's mind is that now Leo Chu turned up injured. I think that was a surprise to us when the injury list came out. We weren't aware of that, were we? And does anybody know what the injury is?
We don't know. Something in the knee. It just says knee. And when I tried to find out, like they didn't even have real info that was available anyway for exactly what it was. Like we know Newman's an ACL, but
he's done for the season, obviously.
I mean, they didn't say that, but if you do an ACL in April, you're not coming back this year. I mean, that's actually going to be a real question going forward, is what they're going to do about it, because now they have no backup right at the minute. There's no backup outside backs.
I noticed on the injury report they had Farfan listed down as out and his injury listed as legs. Which seems like a really, really bad problem to have if you're a professional soccer player.
I'm disappointed that this current coaching staff and or training staff has decided to go with the lower body injury type injury reports. I mean, like, to say Newman, just say knee. It's like, we know it's an ACL. It's like, just say that. Legs. We know he had compartment. I mean, they even told us it was compartment syndrome operation. So.
What was Abraham Lincoln's injury? Head.
Yeah, head.
Legs. I love the fact that it's plural. Legs. Yeah. It's very funny. All right, so let's. All right, so Leggett obviously is out. We knew they've been very forthright about him being out, but there's a great run of mystery about the status of one Petter Musa, and I think, you tell the story, Buzz.
Well, there was some word that it was like, it's precautionary. Like if the playoffs were today, he could go or whatever. But then I heard chatter behind the scenes that he would be out 8 weeks. So, what the official word is or the quasi-official word is versus some chatter, we're going to see. I'm kind of getting the vibe that he's not playing this week either. I would be ecstatic for that vibe to be wrong, for that chatter to be wrong. But, we're just going to have to play it by ear, which is that simple, though. It's Logan Farrington or it's Musa, one or the other. If it's Musa, great. If it's Farrington, that's fine too. Yeah,
but I mean, there's a pretty significant difference between those.
No, but if you're talking about the lineup, it's like that's a no brainer. It's like one or the other. But if it's Musa's available, he's playing. You know what I mean? So, but at the same time, if you're going to go to Miami, you may not fancy your chances anyway. So, why rush it? Let the kid play. So we'll just have to see what Musa turns out at the end of the week. And so go in and make your. Anyone out there who's a gambler, make your gambles appropriately, not knowing who's going to play.
Man, when I saw that happen and I was on the side watching that game and watching them stretcher him over there, I thought, and watching him not be able to put any weight on it. I know we talked about this last week. I thought for sure he was out for 2 months solid. So when they said it was just a minor deal and it was just no big thing and he'd be back in a week or so, I was like, that would shock me.
That did not look like an out-of-week injury to me either. No. But, when a guy has to get stretchered off on a sprained ankle, instantly, not like I'm going to run around for 5 minutes and now I got to go out. No, he instantly was like, I'm out. So whatever, we'll see what happens on that. There's not so much transparency right now in injuries. So
I would not surprise me to see him miss these 3 road games and skip the Open Cup game and maybe come back around May 10th for the Salt Lake.
No way you play with the Open Cup game
or the Houston game. But and if he's back before then, I think that'll be some quick healing.
Yeah,
based on my.
And I would not play with the Open game either way.
No.
All right, so Lucho Costa, I imagine will come back. I can't imagine that. Anderson Julio is the only other real choice at this point. I mean, Leo Chu, even if he was healthy, was been playing like ass, so you wouldn't put him in over Julio, I don't think. Bernie's a mess still. Pedrinho was just okay in this game up in Minnesota. He didn't do very much. He didn't really have a lot of progressive play. At least he tried to go at some guys. I think he was 3 for 6 maybe at going at guys, but not a great game from him. So there's no reason why it won't be Acosta and Anderson Julio again. The trick is in midfield, of course, where I thought those three guys, Show, Ramiro, and Kaique last game was probably about the best set of three that you're going to get there with Leggett still out for another month. I am actually really tempted and would love to see them flip Kaique and Ramiro. Go ahead and do it. Let the kid play in. Let Ramiro be more progressive because he is more progressive. So I would love to see that flipped, but I'm not holding my breath. I think Show outplayed Delgado. I would keep Show in there. If he's perfectly fit. The back is obvious. Nolan and Moore, your only outside back should have available. Iragine is your best player at this point. And then now Abubakar is hurt. He hurt his groin in the first half, so it's got to be Ibiaga and Paes. So you really don't have any choices, right? I mean, with all the injuries you have, there's no choices to be made here unless you're going to rest guys and rotate and decide that Ramiro's started every game and played a lot of minutes. Unless you're just going to go, you know what, Diego Garcia, you're in. 18-year-old Diego Garcia, go play against Messi and Busquets. Good luck, kid. Unless you're going to do that, you really don't have any choices.
Yeah, with Newman hurt, what is the fullback option?
Ramiro? You can't hear me shrugging because I have no idea. I mean, I don't. There's
not a North Texas kid.
Well, you got Malachi Molina, who's a very flying sort of Brian Reynolds genre outside back, but he started 10 games in his North Texas career. That's taking the kid hasn't even graduated high school yet. You can throw him out there against Inter Miami, no.
Why not?
So if you need him for a cup game or an emergency game, okay, sure. But even in North Texas right now, Molina apparently they don't do injury reports at North Texas. I have no idea why. Actually, I do, but it's dumb. So I've heard that Molina actually has got a knock, so that wouldn't be a great choice. They've been starting a 6 at right back for that team because they don't have a right back because Molina's kind of banged up.
All right.
They've been starting a 6 at center back. So, but anyway, not to get too distracted, they've had Diego Garcia up for the last 2 games. I was hoping he was going to get some minutes, but what are you going to do? Start him? It's Delgado got outplayed by Show. You going to put him in there? I mean, maybe you go Delgado Show and let Ramiro have a game off, but I don't think so. So there really are no decisions to be made in the lineup. The lineup makes itself unless you're going to do something crazy like not play Lucho again, which doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, if you guys have a suggestion for somebody you think could actually come in and help this team right now, because I don't see anybody on the team.
No, that's why I'm asking you. You're the expert, not me.
Yeah.
All right, Dallas travels. And remember, not Saturday, Sunday. It's an afternoon game on the Apple TV Plus. Dallas at Inter Miami, probably without Messi, at least for not a start. I'd be shocked if that. And that is at 4 p.m. kickoff. 4 p.m. All right, very good. Let's move on to other topics at hand, and we'll start with, as I look at the run sheet to make sure that I'm not missing anything.
It's the red crayon. Just follow the red crayon.
Let's see. Dallas Trinity got a 1-1 draw over Fort Lauderdale. They're in second place. The big news is that Missimo is out for the full season. After telling us she was only out for a couple of weeks. Now she's had foot surgery and she's done for the year or the season.
Yeah, I mean, they tried to rehab it, and obviously it seems like it didn't work because they changed their mind and she's done for the season. They said that she'll be back for next season, which starts in August or September or something. So you remember they're on the winter calendar.
Bummer.
Yep. So they're gonna have to try and figure out how to play without her. They got to replace her, and the system was built for her. So they got to figure out who they can put in there. That's a good question. I think Dan's right that Cameron Lancaster probably is the choice. They did tie Fort Lauderdale 1-1. Fort Lauderdale's in fourth place, so that was an important point, even though it was at home. They only have 2 home games left out of there, and 3 road games out of 5. 5 games left regular season. Finish in the top 4, you make the playoffs, and they're still in second place. So they're still in a good position, but those top 4 teams are pretty tight. After that, it drops off a bit. So you just got to keep grinding and stay in the top 4 and hope you get a chance in the playoffs. Without Missimo, that's going to be tough. But they've had couple other pieces they've added over the last month or so that have been a nice addition. So they're doing a good job picking up bodies and circulating that roster and put themselves in a good position.
Well, I mean, how many games did Missimo actually play for this team? 5?
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe that. And honestly, 3 of them really weren't anything.
I mean, I think it's a blow for them to lose her because she's obviously a threat and a lot of hype and everything like that. But they've gotten to where they were this season largely without her.
Yeah, but when they signed her, they rebuilt the shape and the tactic around her.
Okay.
Took them a couple of games to get it figured out, and then once they got it figured out, dialed in, they were flying. And then now she's gone. So it's like, okay, do we just try and replace her with a body?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, they don't have Dan. Who's the Portland girl?
Portland?
Yeah,
You mean Sam Meza?
Sam
Seattle.
Meza. Thank you. Oh, Seattle, Portland, whatever, same thing. They don't have Sam Meza anymore. Who was
actually,
the previous?
You're gonna get some hate email, Buzz. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She actually
No,
just
still say
started
that.
for Seattle at the weekend.
She did, but like that's what I'm saying. Like Missimo replaced Meza. Meza was the body, not the body. She's a better player than that. That was the person they brought in on loan for the first half of the season until they got Missimo in place, right? So they put the team's built around that kind of. She was a slightly different player, but it was similar. So when they had Missimo coming, they switched to a back three. They put her in and installed her as like the 10 and basically a 3-man midfield. They got that straightened out, and then she's gone. So now you got to figure out who can be a 10 in my team, or do I change systems? Because they were a 3-4-3 until they figured Missimo out as a 3-5-2. And so that's the only thing is like, okay, I got 5 games left to figure out what the hell I'm doing and get in the playoffs and make some noise. So it's a tough questions for the coach, but she's done a really nice job all year. That coach has.
I think honestly, the bigger concern for them is health in the back. They've had so many issues in a defensive
That's
line
true.
with injuries. You've got Hannah Davison down, just went off of injury. That's going to be a huge concern. She is a huge part of that back line, and there is really not a lot in support. They had Kiara Gilmore and Jordan Hardiman go off to college. Wania Hudson went back from her loan, so they are, they just they signed Athalie Palomo last week, but they're an injury away from kind of the house of cards falling down. It always feels like.
Yeah, thin roster. Well, we've heard that before.
All right, Lexington at the Cotton Bowl next up. Oh,
more importantly, Ali Thornton, first player in USL Super League history to hit 10 goals.
Very nice. Dig it. All right, North Texas lost a game and have a game on Wednesday. Yeah,
they dropped they first came back to tie that game against Rapids 2-2, but then they gave them a 92nd minute scramble. They do have a game on Wednesday against the Quakes Reserves, which is called The Town, but that's the last place team in the league. But they need a get well game because they got a bunch of guys either missing for Dallas Cup or GA Cup, or guys that are injured and we don't know about. We only find out later that, that guy's got a knock. They're playing dudes out of position, trying to patchwork something together. So that team is a bit of a mess right now. And plus they got guys that are getting called up for FC Dallas games, even though they're not playing. Diego Garcia was down there and now he's back up with the first team. Anthony Ramirez was down there. He's back up with the first team. So guys are traveling to Minnesota and then flying back the next day and playing on the day they fly back. Now that's the right way to do it in terms of like, if I want a guy on the bench and doesn't play, then I'm going to get him minutes, but it's tough to fly back in the morning and then play in that evening. So they're a bit of a shake-up right now, but they're still in fourth place. So they got a game this week that they're going to have to try and patchwork it together again. So hopefully they can get it going.
Congratulations to Texoma as they got their very first point, and they did it at Forward Madison. So congratulations to them. That's a stunning, shining moment in the young club's history.
Yeah, you'll love this. Brian Padilla came in, and he's the one that got the goal, that got the tie, got them the point, and the starting forward on the bench got 2 yellow cards in about 5 seconds on the bench, and will be out. They got a red. No. Got a yellow, and then immediately got another yellow.
While he was on the bench?
On the bench, bang, bang, yellow card.
What do you say to a referee? How stupid do you got to be?
I don't know what he said, but man, he got a quick, pow, and he was out. So he'll be out next game. So probably our man, Brian Padilla, probably have to play, might have to start for them this next game coming up. So and obviously he's very talented, but he definitely is an MLS caliber talent that just had his career come off the rails from all the injuries and will never be that level, but still is very talented for that group.
All right. They have a USL Cup game, group stage game this weekend against El Paso. So I'll be interested.
Star Wars night.
hear what kind of turnout they have for that particular thing. I wanted to update everybody because this is some changes or updates has transpired since we talked about this last week. Obviously, the story about the Highland Park team having to forfeit the state final. There was lots of speculation about what the cause of that was, and initially, word was it had something to do with the time. Like the window of time for eligibility flipping later in the day than the game was being played. Well, subsequent to that, we have been told, I've been doing some investigation and learning about this, and has also been supported by something that Bevan Ryan, the widow of Bobby Ryan and the mother of Jake Ryan, who's actually on the team, that it's even more obscure than that. It is almost unbelievably, the player in question was ineligible because he was taking a class that at the state level is considered an honors course, but Highland Park ISD has a list of classes that they do not consider are honors courses that the state does. And this is one of those classes. And what you should know is that if you're in an honors course, you can get down to a grade of 60, and still be considered passing or eligible versus a regular class. So the difference between biology and AP biology is a 10-point swing in the grade. So the gist of it is, and this seems ridiculous, that if this same kid had been playing for another team and gotten the same grade in the same class, he would have been eligible. But because he was playing at Highland Park and whatever standard they set for themselves, he's deemed ineligible. Now, what's happened is on Thursday of last week, the parents, who were obviously very upset about this, went and met with the school board, the Highland Park School Board, to urge them to file an appeal with the UIL, because I've been told by multiple people that these types of things get appealed all the time at UIL, and UIL regularly overturns them because they understand kind of the wonkiness of the nature of these things. And there's a good chance Highland Park would get it turned over and regain the championship, but the school board is sticking to their guns and refusing to do it.
Whew.
And do not be surprised if a lawsuit isn't coming, and soon.
The moral of the story is money can't buy sense.
Well, here's the thing. I feel bad for all the kids, and I do think it is ridiculous that the standard, and let me also say this, in kind of doing some talking to people and reporting on this, finding out the number of loopholes that school districts have created for themselves to allow students to play and not worry about becoming ineligible is horrifying. Like, I talked to one guy that told me there are school districts that put kids in honors classes because in that district, it's not a grade thing. If you're in an honors class, it's considered an exempt class. And because the state defers to whatever the district's rules are versus the state rule, school districts put kids in these honors classes that don't need to be in them because it doesn't make any difference if they get 100, a 70, or a 21. They still get to play because they're not ineligible because they're in an honors class.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
It's definitely crazy.
So anyway, I don't think we've heard the last of this, by the way.
I would bet not. Yeah, I bet not.
Just so everybody know, Bevan Ryan, lawyer.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
And the thing that she posted on social about this, very lawyer-esque. Let me say that.
And I think when your son assists one of the goals, probably becomes a bit more of a high priority too.
Yeah, and by the way, Jake went on to win a Dallas Cup title this weekend and played. He's playing with Solar, not FC Dallas, and he's playing for Solar, and they won a Dallas Cup title. And some really cool pictures of Bevan, Jake, his brother, Andy Swift down on the field with Bobby's memorial sign up at the press box behind them in the background. Cool. Really, really cool stuff. So we'll see where that goes. Okay. I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm trying to think. Anything else we want to talk about tonight? Are we done?
I think that's about it.
They added another World Cup team base camp. So DFW has 6 now, which is 3 more than any other city in the US, Canada, or Mexico.
Interesting.
I saw that FC Dallas replied to somebody on social media that they're going to put up a construction cam. It's a live feed so people can check it out.
I got to tell you, the scenes of them starting to do demolition while a Dallas Cup game is being played was pretty ridiculous. I hope, you know what? That could be a really interesting bit to do demolition during FC Dallas games.
That'd be cool.
That'd be kind of like the new Lone Star construction worker guy.
Knocking down Crabber in the middle of the
game. Why
not? Yeah, why not? It's like a dinner and a show.
Did everybody else cheer when you saw the Avocare sign come down?
People enjoyed that clip. I mean, that was fun. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Third Degree the Podcast is brought to you by listeners like you. If you enjoy Third Degree the Podcast or any of our work at thirddegree.net or on social media, our coverage of all the professional teams in the Dallas area, including FC Dallas, why not support us on Patreon? Patreon.com/Third Degree. Contribute any amount you want. If you go up to the Three Amigos level, you can join our amazing Discord and the great community. We're growing there. That's patreon.com/Third Degree. Thanks again for your support.
All right. Well, I think we've done it. Good stuff, guys. Dan, you got anything else? No.
Good. I think we're all just a bit tired from Dallas Cup, aren't we?
Yes, for sure. Well, I hope construction on your new Only Dan studio goes well.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're finished for the night. And Buzz, hope Dallas Cup was good to you, sir.
It's not bad. It wasn't the best one ever because of the schedule, but it was pretty good.
I hope it was better for you than it was Chad Deering. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you, North Texas DFW area curious soccer fan. We will speak to you next week. Don't edit that out, Buzz.
You have to work on that, yeah.
On the next episode of Third Degree, the podcast.
Sorry, Chad. Please don't sue.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.